Hello students, today we are going to discuss the rise of Hindutva politics in India. This unit would enable the students to understand the historical context of Hindu nationalism, Hindutva as a political ideology, Hindutva in contemporary Indian politics, BJP and the rise of Hindutva politics and the contemporary scenario. To start with, the preamble to the Indian Constitution declares India as a sovereign, socialist, secular, democratic republic. The terms socialist and secular were incorporated later into the Constitution through 42nd Amendment Act. Indian social order is known to be a multicultural, multi-religious society on account of the assortment of classes, caste, religion, ethnicity living within the territory of India. Within all these disparities, Muslims form the major minority in India. However, a clear-cut pluralistic discrepancy between the theory and practice of the Indian Constitution is obvious because India, in the context of the social profile, minority is defined on the basis of its cultural differences with the dominant group or majority in the society. Therefore, the majority culture pervades every aspect of Indian life to the extent that it often suffocates the interest and aspirations of the minorities. Secularism was incorporated in the Indian Constitution to accommodate and ensure the welfare of the vast array of religious conglomerates. Secularism is the belief that religion should not interfere or be involved in the organization of society, education, and government. It is a principle that segregates the elected governing bodies and the government institution from religious institutions and personages. Secularism is espoused by various states to guarantee religious freedom to their people and refrain the government from obstructing the people's religious beliefs, hence permitting them to practice their religion without restraint. However, as India declares itself a secular state, so it is anticipated that every individual, regardless of the religion, should be treated equally within the state vowed to secularism. Unfortunately, it is not the case with India. India, which follows a majoritarian policy with a Hindu overtone, which means the dominance of Hindus in every walk of life. It is harmless for a state to follow a single religion, but when that ideology encourages policies that puts the rights of the minorities at stake and they are suppressed by the extremist entities and serve the interest of the hegemonic power, they become dangerous. India is considered to be one of the world's largest democracies, comprising of almost 1.3 billion people that constitutes multiple ethnic, diverse linguistic and religious and caste divisions. Indian society thus becomes one of the most pluralistic societies with complex social structures. Therefore, Indian politics is a combination of liberal democracy and religious sentiments that has resulted in religiously rooted nationalism. Now we come to the historical context of Hindu nationalism. A divide in Indian society was instigated that got flared up with the partition of Bengal in 1905. British contended that Bengal was too big a province to be considered as a single unit, and therefore they divided Bengal, giving politically less active areas of Bihar to intellectual Hindus, political leaders of Calcutta, and the new Muslim majority of Eastern Bengal and Assam were created with Dhaka as its capital. After the partition, a new wave of spiteful nationalism ascended by intellectuals of Kolkata, the Bengali Bhadralok. The Hindu believers asserted that this was an attempt to divide the mother province, a home of Hindu goddess Ma Kali, resulting in new slogan of Vande Mataram that became Congress's new anthem. Amidst the political unrest in Bengal, the first leader of Indian freedom struggle surfaced, Bal Gangadhar Tilak. He also came to be the first right popularist leader in India. He was the leader who initiated the Swadeshi movement and thus became the reason for polarizing the Indian National Congress. Tilak, along with Lala Lajpat Rai and Bipin Chandra Pal, were Hindu nationalists that transformed political discourse of Indian freedom struggle. They were known as extremist Hindu leaders and were considered as populist because of their fight for the Hindu population against the British Raj. Populism in India was not always directed against the Muslims, but eventually it got diverted towards them. They were the first radical right populist leaders in India that politically raised their voices against British in favor of independent India. They mobilized masses in their cause under the flag of Kesari, due to which Muslims got estranged. Their belief on Ramayana and Gita made them resent the lower caste and other religions in their subconscious. Lala Lajpat Rai among them was influenced by the Arya Samaj and was a Hindu movement believing in reviving Hinduism to its formal glory. For this purpose, they initiated a Shuddhi movement in 1920s, targeting Christians and Muslims to either convert or reconvert them back to Hinduism. Movement cemented Hindu majoritarianism in Congress. They crystallized the notion of Hinduism in Indian society. Tilak also favored Veda teachings and alienated Muslims in many fronts. It was only a matter of time. Populism in India that is being witnessed today took its form in 1920s. In early 1900, when Muslim League was formed due to the fear of Muslim being the minority undermined of their rights, another radical right Hindu was also nourishing Hindu believers under the Hindu Mahasabha. A sub-party lobbying under Congress was Vinayak Damodar Savarkar. As we know of Hindu nationalism today, it was born in the wake of the Khilafat movement in the front of Hindutva by Savarkar. Hindu Mahasabha, along with Arya Samaj, was convinced that Muslims have started to pose Hinduism a greater threat, which is why they initiated their Shuddhi Tehreek in 1923 that turned controversial, damaging Hindu-Muslim relation even further. Shuddhi Tehreek was followed by a Sanghatan movement, deepening Hindu magnificent position of themselves and creating problems for other religions. Concept of Hindu nationalism now was expanding its grasp. Fight, which initially was against British, became widespread into the thought of Hindu Rashtra. Idea of Swaraj presented by Lal Bal Pal became vastly accepted by radical Hindu masses. This led to the division in Congress into two distinct factions. Faction related to Gandhi wanted a secular democratic state. Tilak and his faction, on the other hand, inclined upon different ideology regarding Indian nationalism. His idea was of Hindu ruling India as one divine majority. The principles of Tilak and Savarkar gave birth to Rashtriya Swayam Sevak Sangh (RSS) and the rise of Hindu wing populism in India. BJP today is the offspring of the sentiments that were generated a century ago. Anthony D. Smith, a famous historical sociologist, also asserted that Savarkar's Hindutva became foundation for Hindu nationalism, leading to communal violence in 21st century. In 2014, BJP's Narendra Modi was elected as the Prime Minister. Modi is affiliated to RSS and had firm Hindu beliefs. He used populist rhetoric of Hindutva, promising a state for the people of Hindu nation. Thus, setting off a frustrated nation into a religious muddle. He moved the society in order to change the character of India and targeted his policies towards making India a Hindu Rashtra. Now we come to the understanding of Hindutva as a political ideology. Hindutva is a central ideology of the Sangh Parivar, a group of Hindu nationalist organization in India known as Rashtriya Swayamsevak Sangh (RSS), Bharatiya Janata Party and the Vishwa Hindu Parishad. Hindutva, a Hindu nationalist political ideology, was introduced in India in the 1920s. The Hindutva ideology demanded to endorse the Hindu way of life and its cultural symbols in every walk of life in India and to establish a Hindu hegemony. It is a blending of political fascism and religious fundamentalism. It is often defined as both a profoundly religious and aggressive form of militant nationalism. The agents of Hindutva, since its inception, has tried to gain paramount power by imposing its agenda upon all of India. This agenda of Hindutva or Ram Rajya, that it aims to create one nation, one culture, one religion and one language. This Ram Rajya would be ruled by the precepts of Sanatana Dharma and Hindu icons, symbols, norms that invokes the principles of Vedas must be the basis of the nation. Justification for this ideology is convoluted and depends on how facts of history or events are interpreted and in what context. Hindu is a modern term, hardly 2 centuries old. Originally, it was used to describe anything native to India, and it encompassed Christians, Muslims, tribals and untouchables. With time, the term evolved and was mainly applied to religious phenomenon within Indian subcontinent. Its norms were increasingly determined by heavy Hindu inputs, mainly Brahmanical or high-born ideas in its interpretation. The concept was also molded by events and processes which ultimately communalized its meaning. The same term during the past century has been increasingly used as an instrument for exclusion, repudiating all that does not conform to the ideas of sacred birth and sacred earth. Today, the term is used to exclude both Christians and Muslims. It is, however, used to incorporate by definition all Buddhist, Sikhs, tribals and untouchable communities within its fold. Many communities see it in the form of Hindu colonialism and domination and hence resent such inclusion. They see it in the form of communal imprisonment or marginalization. The modern construction of the term began with the colonial rule. Hindus then became a generic label to describe all manifestation of social, ritual and cultural life within India. It mainly applied to high cultures and religious traditions as defined by the Brahmins. This conception of the term was radicalized during the freedom struggle that became the basis of Hindu nationalism. Now we come to Hindutva in contemporary Indian politics. The exploration of the relationship between Hinduism as a religion and Hindutva as a political philosophy has become a virtual academic exercise in recent times. In popular writings on the subject, Hindutva has been variously described as Hinduism which resists or as an illegitimate child of Hinduism, etc. A preliminary way of understanding the difference between Hinduism and Hindutva would be to recognize that Hinduism is a religion while Hindutva or Hindu nationalism is a political ideology whose relation to the religion of Hinduism could be considered equivalent to the relationship between Christianity and Christian fundamentalism or Islam or Islamic fundamentalism. There is, however, one key difference. Hinduism is a plural tradition as compared to Christianity and Islam, which possess well-defined universal creedal formulations that are largely absent in Hinduism, according to most observers. Indian democracy today is facing deeper challenges because of the radicalization of Indian society. A prolonged clash between religion, ethnic diversity, and caste has shaped India's socio-political order. Radicalization is also known as an emotional process that motivates a group to assume violent behavior. Hindus and Muslims are the two most prominent religions in South Asia, and India is home to both these religions. In fact, Muslims constitute the largest minority in India. The relation between these two religious groups is largely shaped by the experiences of the past. India is home to multiple other religions like Sikhism, Buddhism, Christianity, which also faces problem of polarized society. Other minority religions has also have delinquent relationship with Hinduism. Sikhism, the fourth largest religion in India, having a huge diaspora, but relation between Hinduism and Sikhism are also troubled. The disagreement started in the 1980s with Khalistan movement that was struck down by Operation Blue Star. But in reality, the disagreement was that Hindu extremists would urge that Sikhism is similar to their dharmic religion, that is, Hinduism. However, on multiple occasions, Sikhs have denied the relationship with Hinduism. People belonging to Christianity, on the other hand, also faces similar problems in India. For years, Christianity has suffered at the hands of Hindu extremists. Radical right Hindus have carried out many unspeakable acts of violence against Christians. Christianity is the third largest religion in India, and they have suffered equally as that of the Muslims. Hindu extremist militants in 2007 and 2008 burned churches, houses, and markets of Christian community, leaving almost 91 of them dead, and many were wounded and homeless. Dangers for them increased with time. In 2016, the All India Christian Council recorded almost 40% increase in violence against Christians, and that is after the leading power has captured the central governmental structures. Prior to the 1980s, the predecessor of the BJP, which is the Jan Sangh, had very little popular appeal or support. The BJP had initially drawn its support mainly from upper caste Hindus. V.D. Savarkar and Golwalkar's elaboration of Hindutva provided the foundation for the RSS, which was later on transformed into a political party which is now known as the Bharatiya Janata Party. Now let us discuss the rise of Hindutva politics under BJP. It rose to power at a remarkable pace. With just 2 seats in 1989, it had risen to 119 seats in 1996. It was still then a minority party in the lower house of the Indian Parliament, which has 543 members in total. The BJP benefited from a political and ideological vacuum, situating itself as an alternative to the Congress party at a time when people were disillusioned with the Congress party as the government was constantly facing accusations of corruption and malpractices. At a time of economic crisis and ambiguity, the concept of Hindu hegemony and harmony and solidarity functioned as a means of social stabilization. The BJP put itself forward as a defender of Hindu society and continued to its use of offensive propaganda against the other minority communities. The central element of the reorientation of the Shah Bano case and the Ayodhya campaign, as Ahmed has observed regarding communalism, As an aggressive kind of rightist nationalism, it takes advantage of the misery of the masses. The Supreme Court of India took a decision on the Shah Bano case which concerned maintenance for the divorced Muslim wife in her favor. This was seen by Muslim organizations as interference in the Sharia law. Muslim organizations organized protest movements, and Rajiv Gandhi's government amended the law in their favor. On February 25, 1986, the Muslim Women Bill was moved in the parliament to override the Supreme Court's ruling in the Shah Bano case. This provided new ammunition for right-wing Hindu organization who referred to this as the appeasement of Muslims, and they mobilized Hindus against it. Under pressure to tackle Hindu grievances, Rajiv Gandhi's government opened the doors to Babri Mosque at Ayodhya for Hindus to worship. All this had been far-reaching consequences. Right-wing Hindu organization appealed to the masses who had enough of the Congress party's corruption, nepotism and inefficiency, and were looking for an alternative. These organizations carefully projected themselves as an alternative to the Congress's misrule, presenting them as being principled, honest and disciplined guardians of Indian ethos. However, BJP's influence was confined to North and Western Indian states because, as Jeffrey Lott observes, largely due to the stress it puts on a Sanskritized culture, an upper caste ethos which was more prevalent in North India, and an anti-Muslim attitude to which South Indian was less receptive given the greater integration of Islam in this region. Up to the 1980s, in effect, Hindu nationalism recruited most of its supporters among the urban upper caste, middle caste, and the landed elite of North India. Moreover, the state-owned television aired weekly installments of a serialization of Ramayana, which glorified the past, strengthening the Hindu sentiments. People's frustrations and grievances were fully exploited by the right-wing Hindu organization, and they were successful in manipulating the disillusionment of the people. As a result, the parliamentary election of 1996 was one of the most dramatic in the political history of India, when Hindu communalist organization led by BJP and Shiv Sena emerged as the largest single bloc in the Indian parliament. The RSS provided the organizational strength to the BJP, and its senior leaders pledged their allegiance to the RSS. Now let's discuss the contemporary scenario. India's Bharatiya Janata Party, the BJP, once on the political margin became, and because of its hardline nationalist view emphasizing Hindu superiority, has held a majority in the parliament since 2014. Prime Minister Narendra Modi fanned ethnic divisions during re-elections campaign in 2019, and now finding ways to implement a political program to satisfy the populist in his party, while improving India's economic prospect and continuing a multi-alignment foreign policy followed by his predecessors. A series of political development in India over the past years have focused attention there and abroad on the rising influence of right-wing Hindu nationalists in the ruling Bharatiya Janata Party and on BJP's Prime Minister Narendra Modi. These developments include the passage of the amendment to the National Citizenship Law that has seemed to discriminate against Muslims, the removal of autonomy provisions granted in the 1950s to Jammu and Kashmir, India's only Muslim majority state, etc. There are also instances of vigilante attack on Muslims for selling and consumption of beef, which is banned in most parts of the country, and the enforcement and regulations that makes marriages between Hindus and Muslims difficult. Another step was to undertake a nationwide revision of names of places, changing many place names with Islamic implications into names with strong Hindu hue. For example, Allahabad was officially named as Prayagraj in 2018. In 2019, BJP introduced a series of Hindu nationalist policies and agendas with greater implication. Abrogation of Article 370 that granted special status to Jammu and Kashmir. It established instead two separate federal territories and began allowing non-locals to buy real estate there. In November 2019, by a Supreme Court ruling, Ayodhya was recognized as the birthplace of Lord Ram and gave the place where the mosque used to be to a trust fund to rebuild the Ram temple. The rise of Hindu nationalism and the evolution of India's political ecology are of reciprocal connection and mutually enhancing, and are exerting an increased influence over the future development of the country, both domestically as well as internationally. To conclude, populism in 21st century has become a new normal in international politics. This really has found its way into modern political affairs of India under Narendra Modi. The rise of BJP under Modi has marked a final rise of right-wing populism in India, as traces of populism were found in past among leaders like Tilak, who had their ideological base embedded in the Hindutva of Savarkar, which today are the main ideology of current Indian government. With this, we come to the end of our discussion. Thank you.